How have you traumatized your parents? When I was in 8th grade I was staying the night at my friend's house, and it so happened that one of my favorite movies, A Christmas Story, was going to be playing on TBS. My family didn't have cable and I knew everyone would enjoy watching it on Christmas at my house, so I asked my buddy if we could record it onto VHS so I could take it home. He grabbed a blank tape from his dad's office, popped it in the VCR, and we recorded Ralphie and his Christmas shenanigans. The following day I went home and told my parents and siblings that I had a copy of the movie. They were ecstatic and we all agreed to watch it the following week on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve rolls around, and my parents, brothers, about 5 and 8 years old, sister, 7 years old, and myself gather around the TV to watch the movie. I rewind the tape to beginning and press play. For the next 3 seconds, although it felt like an hour, my entire family and I watched a woman sucking a large dong before it quickly cut to A Christmas Story. We had obviously taped over one of my friend's dad's porno tapes. Nobody flinched. I looked at my parents, who had these bizarre frozen smiles as if nothing had happened and everything was right with the world. My brothers and sister continued watching the TV but had looks of bewilderment on their faces as they tried to process what they had just seen while simultaneously trying to enjoy the beginning of A Christmas Story. Nobody in my family has ever mentioned this event since. I'm 30 years old now, and A Christmas Story is no longer a part of our family Christmas tradition. You'll shoot your eye out, may have different interpretations in that part of A Christmas Story. When I was 15 I was super frickin' frisky all the time. I also had never seen a dong other than my own or in a porno. These two things are important. So I have my group of friends and one of my friends who we will call D had older, cooler brothers. So they would get us pornos and we would trade with each other every so often. After a while have a collection of about 8 or 9 pornos, all VHS, hidden in a garment bag which contained a suit I never wore, in my closet. I also had acquired a dong pump. I know, laugh it up. Honestly I thought it was small by comparison, but it was the kind that has the long cylinder and squeeze pump. This was also hidden in the garment bag, along with condoms and cigars. I just knew it was a genius hiding spot. Incorrecto. Come home from school one day, with everything that was in the garment bag on the kitchen counter, super busted, and my mom is freaking the frick out over the dong pump. It was like she found a severed head or some crap. She was mortified. So she yells at me and says wait till I tell your dad and sends me up to my room. My dad comes home. I hear them talking. Then I hear him ascending the stairs. I am terrified. He opens the door with the biggest grin on his face. Tells me not to worry about it, gives me my condoms back but says we have to throw the tapes and pump away, but he put them in a bag and put them on top of the garbage so I could retrieve them, and told me it was nothing. I was a teenage boy and that my mom would never understand. My mom thought I was the devil though. Father of the Year. When we were about 5 or 7 years old me and my brother discovered the similarities between ketchup and blood. Mom wasn't home yet, so we got some knives from the kitchen, all the ketchup we could find, cut some holes in our shirts for the knives and staged a huge crime scene in the living room. We loved secretly watching the thrillers our parents used to see in the evenings from the living room door when we were believed to be in our beds, so we had some experience with a plausible scenario and put a lot of thought into it, creating a huge battle scene with blood on the walls, the couches and of course lots of ketchup on our motionless bodies in the center of the room. Mom had kind of a breakdown. You were a fricked up child. So when I was 16 I found out that who I thought was my dad was actually just my stepdad and not my real dad. Well, a sister I never knew about contacted me and it turns out my real dad lived in a small town just 8 miles away from mine. Well, I met my sister and had her come over one day while my mom was at work. My mom came home early and when I introduced my sister, I introduced her as my girlfriend. The look on my mom's face was priceless. That is beautifully evil. I was around 14 and was pretty depressed, so my parents were on guard. One day, I woke up early with a runny nose, but being tired I just went back to sleep. A few hours later, my mom is panicking as she wakes me up. My face was covered in blood due to a bloody nose and I looked like a corpse. I sneezed when I had a bloody nose once during the night. So there was blood splattered on my wall and pillow with blood all over at noon while I was still sleeping pretty heavily when my mom came to wake me up. I woke up because of the loud screaming going on in my room and scared the entire family by accident. I fell out of a moving car when I was 6. Luckily I was in a car seat and I landed in grass. How does this happen? I was young enough that I took supervised baths. My mom stepped out of the bathroom for just a few seconds and I thought it would be super funny to sink to the bottom and lie motionless. Mom didn't think it was nearly as funny when she came back in. Similarly, I was young enough to take supervised baths and was exhausted at the time. My mom stepped out and I instantly fell asleep. With my face in the water, I was dreaming and I knew it was hard to breathe. My mom came in screaming my name and my head shot up, slamming into the faucet. I was fine, but she put me to bed instantly. When I was about 8 years old, I was going through our medicine cabinet, like the little rascal I was, and found one of my brother's old EpiPens, the epinephrine injector fused during a severe allergic reaction. I was curious about how it worked, and figured it was like any other pen in that you clicked the top with your thumb and the needle came out the other end. Turns out the needle comes out of the end that you click, and it ended up going right into my thumb. When my parents came upon me screaming my lungs out in the bathroom, the walls were painted with blood that I'd sprayed around getting the pen out of my thumb. Apparently it was pretty grisly. Lol, my brother did literally the exact same thing with my EpiPen when he was like 11ish, in the middle of a church service. To this day we don't know why, but toddler me decided one night to get out of bed, grab my toy hammer, walk to my parents' room, round the bed, and smack my sleeping dad in the face before dropping the hammer and returning to bed. He's still jumpy in his sleep. Thanks for the laugh. My mom and dad walked in on me using a plastic bag with lotion. Needless to say I didn't finish and the awkward laughter that came from their room was embarrassing, I'd like to say, frick you. I came here as a moderately innocent young man and you took that away from me. That otter video took my youth. When I was about 7, I lost my cat. He just disappeared one day, probably coyotes, but his favorite thing to do was to sleep in my mom's bathroom sink. Also, my neighborhood is infested with cats because someone down the street never got hers fixed. So, now for the real story. I was swinging on my porch swing, looked over into the bushes, and saw a cat. It was laying down, eyes closed, mouth open, no wounds as far as I could see. It looked asleep, but it looked sick too. So to make it feel better, I picked the dead cat up, took it inside, and placed it in the bathroom sink. Plus, I was feeling really lonely after my first cat disappeared. I thought my mom would let me keep this one. TLDR. My mom walked in on me petting a dead cat I had placed in the bathroom sink. I find this morbidly adorable. A child with little understanding of the concept of death attempting to tend to an animal's corpse. I think that definitely would have left a mark on me as a parent, though I think I'd be more moved than traumatized. My mom got my sister and I our first set of makeup when we were 11 and 15. We ran to the bathroom to try it out and immediately decided that the best course of action was to paint bruises and wounds all over our faces, fake fight sounds and screaming, then run to our mother's office area appearing like we needed to go to the hospital. It worked. She turned about as white as a sheet and screamed before we collapsed into laughter. We weren't allowed to have makeup again until we were adults and bought it for ourselves. I haven't, but my little sister used to hold her breath when she threw a fit, used to scare my mom to death. My dad said she'll start breathing when she passes out. My daughter threatened me with this. I looked at her with a bored look until she went down. I didn't catch her or anything. She came to and realized daddy wasn't being bullied. When I was about 9 years old, we lived in a crappy high-rise apartment building. I opened the window of my bedroom, removed the screen, stuck my head out the window and screamed as loud as I could like I was falling. I then quickly proceeded to hide under my bed as my parents frantically came running into my room with me nowhere to be seen and thought I fell out the window. Eventually I started giggling and was busted. They were not impressed, to say the least. The first movie I saw with my ex-wife was Knocked Up. At the time there was awkwardness, because we'd accidentally had fricked unprotected the week before. It turned into a big joke between us, and I bought the movie for her for Christmas. Mom asked me, "What did you get Jen for Christmas?" and without hesitating or thinking, I said, "Knocked up." She was driving and almost wrecked the car. When I was in kindergarten, I made a friend while at school. We really hit it off, and she said she had a big bag of Halloween candy at home and offered to share it with me. It was a fairly short walk to her place from school, and from her place a short little walk home. So I head over to her place and completely forget to tell my parents where I went after school. I completely lose track of time. We ate candy and played video games. Her family must have thought my parents knew where I was. We played board games and ate dinner, and I didn't go home until after 9. I remember getting home, walking through the front door and being greeted by the sight of my parents, both completely in tears, on the phone with the police. I immediately realized what I did wrong, and I thought for sure I was going to be grounded forever. They weren't mad, though. They were just overjoyed that I was okay. A bunch of bear hugs and tear-filled expressions of parental affection later. I felt terrible. They must have thought I was dead. I was missing for over 6 hours. Every single one of their friends was out looking for me. I am such an butthole. TLDR. When I was in kindergarten, I disappeared for over 6 hours on my way home from school and didn't tell anyone where I was, so I could play video games and eat candy. You were 5. 5-year-olds don't understand consequences well. This happened the summer after my senior year of high school. After a long night of drinking, I came home and apparently felt the desire to puke. My parents live on the 3rd floor. I live on the 2nd and have a bathroom on my floor. For some reason I turned the fan on when I went into the bathroom, which is kinda loud, and my parents' room is pretty much right above the bathroom. So I puked hard, mostly in the toilet at first. I get hot and really sweaty when I'm puking, so naturally I strip down to my boxers. I then somehow managed to puke all over myself. Well, that's unacceptable to drunk me, so I guess I decided to take a shower to clean up. Never managed to turn the water on. Next thing I know, I'm getting woken up by my mother screaming bloody murder, crying profusely. Apparently I passed out in the tub. The fan woke my mom up in the middle of the night, so she came to investigate and found me nearly naked, covered in my own puke, passed out in the bathtub with, she says, my eyes rolling into the back of my head. She thought I was dead. I would say that was a bit traumatizing for her. TLDR. My mom found me passed out covered in puke in the bathtub and thought I was dead. I think being covered in puke should be unacceptable to normal you. I was 3 or 4 and wrecked my tricycle and hit my head on my sister's bike pedal, who was riding right beside me. I hit an artery and my white shirt turned red before I got back inside to show her. She still freaks out thinking about it. You actually got really lucky. If you did indeed hit an artery, as an adult you probably would have died if you didn't have someone there who knew how to deal with the situation. Tourniquet 911 etc. But as a child, your arteries will actually clot and the bleeding will typically stop itself before you die or even pass out. When my sister was about 2, she climbed up on the bathroom counter, grabbed my father's razor, and proceeded to brush her teeth with it. Luckily all she did was nick her tongue with it, but the amount of blood was awful. The thought of this made me hyperventilate. When I was younger, my parents took one of my toys away from me, a brand new motherfricking Hulk toy. This made toddler me angry, so I did the only logical thing to do. I crap in their room. I crap all over their bed and floor. I reminded my mom about it and she said it wasn't just crap, but diarrhea. I sprayed diarrhea all over my parents' bedroom. When I was young, maybe around 5 or 6, I was trying to find Christmas presents in closets or under beds, but instead I found a crap load of condoms and adult toys. At the time I didn't know what they were, so I opened up the box of condoms, thinking it was a balloon. I started to run downstairs with what I thought was a sword, celeb, and trying to blow up the condoms. I then ran into the room where my parents were and started telling them how I finally found my Christmas presents. My parents still talk about that today. XX Christmas came early that year. After my first BJ's, I rushed home to tell my best friend in the world at the time. I got on Facebook chat and told him every dirty detail. I then left my Facebook open when I went to shower. My mom, after arriving home, went to check her email and learned about my new adult adventures. When I was 7 or 8, I did a science project on the antibacterial efficacy of various soaps. It basically involved keeping hands dirty for a day, pressing grubby thumbs into petri dishes full of agar, then washing and doing the same again. I'd take tracings of the cultures. Bigger colonies were bad, smaller ones good. This ended up winning the county science fair for my grade in a large metropolitan area, so that was nice. But before that, after I'd finished the experiments but before I'd discarded the dishes, I got into a dispute with my parents. Don't remember what about. I thought, I'll show them. So I took the nastiest culture and swabbed it onto their bedroom doorknob. They both got sick as dogs and I had to take care of them for a couple of days. Served me right. TLDR. I waged bacteriological warfare against my parents using my science project, but I told them long ago and we laugh about it now. I like the way you think. My dad was fixing this big butt closet one day. The closet was very old and had an extremely heavy door. The problem with that closet was that the door hinges was loose. At that time I was about 8-9 years old, and my little sister was fooling around inside the closet while my dad was trying to tighten the hinges. He told me to get her out of there, since she was just bothering him, and as I lifted her up, the goddamn closet door fell down on my pinky toe. It's all a blur, but I clearly remember me running down the hallway screaming my heart out while my sock got pumped with blood. After that I passed out, waking up a while later in the backseat of my father's car, with a shitload of toilet paper around my foot. My dad didn't say a word. When I arrived at the hospital I got drugged down and operated. Fortunately, they managed to put my pinky toe back where it belonged. I'm guessing my dad felt very shameful after the incident. However, my mom told me a couple of years ago that after I lost my toe, he immediately put it inside his mouth, because he had read that was the only way to save the toe from dying or something like that, and drove to the hospital with the toe in his mouth. I don't think he'll forget that. When I was 13, I was about as frisky as you'd expect a 13-year-old to be. The problem was, I was living in a very religious household at the time. My parents go through phases. This was their religious phase. Luckily for me it was while I was going through puberty, and my parents had an ironclad parental filter on the interwebs, so pee was out of the question. So I decided to draw my own pee. And I'm a pretty dang good artist when it comes to drawing things that are right in front of me to look at. So what I'd do is, I'd take magazine pictures of women who had relatively little clothing on, and just edit out the clothing as I was drawing. Well, of course, my parents found my stack of drawings eventually, which isn't too bad I guess. My dad even said uncomfortably that I had some talent at drawing and should pursue it, just with different subject matter. Here's the part that makes me cringe. My mother decided that one of the drawings looked too much like her. It was purely coincidental. It was literally a picture out of an advertisement that I had copied to the best of my ability, and she asked me, very uncomfortably, if I fantasized about her. Ladies and gentlemen, not much in the world makes you want to crawl into a hole and die more than when your own mother thinks you've been fantasizing about her. Nothing came of this. She asked if it was her. I said no. It was really awkward for a while, and then we moved on. Sorry, but hardly anything that our incest would find exciting. And she asked me, very uncomfortably, if I fantasized about her. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. You know how your parents told you to never run with scissors? Well, I did not listen. I was running through the house like a retard, and I tripped. The scissors went through my front teeth and jammed in the back of my throat. Blood sprayed out my mouth and nose. It frightened my parents so much that my mom passed out, and when she fell her face was smashed on the floor. So I had to get 3 sticks. My mom had $30,000 worth of face surgery, so I figuratively and literally traumatized my parents. That's pretty close to a worst case scenario right there. Ouch. One time during my sophomore year in college, I had been feeling guilty for not seeing my family very often, even though they lived 20 minutes away, so I decided to take them out to dinner. Since I had some extra cash, I thought I would take them out somewhere nice, so we all went to Black Angus. I thought it would be cool to bring my boyfriend that I had been dating seriously for 6 months. No one in my family normally does this. I find out later that my dad was scared shitless that I was either going to tell the family I was either pregnant or getting married at that dinner. My mom has walked in on me fapping. Not the best way to tell my mom I'm growing up. She later told my dad, who simply said okay, good for him. Well, crap. When I was 2 or 3 my parents had me in the backyard. I was running around and generally being a small child, you know how it is. Apparently I saw something cool on the ground and like most children my first reaction was to put this fancy thing in my mouth. The fancy thing was bird crap. My mom screamed and took a hose to my mouth. Bonus, I'm a huge misophobe now. When I was a toddler I drank water remover. I smarts. It's okay, my little brother drank antifreeze because he thought it was Kool-Aid. I call it stunt baby. My 4-month-old standing on my hand as I balance him and let people take pictures. I hated school in 4th grade. Terrible teacher, a few bratty other students, made going to school miserable. So I loved any excuse to get out of school for all or part of the day, even if it was a doctor's appointment. One day, for some reason, my doctor's appointment was cancelled. I was having none of this. I barricaded myself in my bedroom, no lock on the door, just my desk chair and some stuffed animals as a blockade, and screamed that I would rather die than go to school. My mom was freaked out, crying hysterically and everything. My poor dad, having to deal with 2 hysterical women girls at once. The next day I had an emergency session with mom's therapist. It's good you got to a therapist, but I think your mom overreacted. A lot of kids say they'd rather die than do something. Becoming hysterical over it is an overreaction. I traumatized my mother twice, both times when I was about 3 years old. The first time we were walking through the botanic gardens and there was a wedding taking place. Apparently the bride was a larger lady, and I piped up in my piercing little voice, "Mummy, look at that fat bride." My mother grabbed me under one arm and ran away. She thinks the bride didn't hear, but she's certain some of the guests did. The second time I traumatized her, she took me to her work one day and I met one of her colleagues. He was from Ghana and had very dark skin. Apparently I said, "Mummy, look at that dirty man." Mum said she just wanted the floor to swallow her up. But the guy handled it with exceptional grace and just laughed and said, "Don't worry, at least I can't blush." Yeah, I'm surprised I wasn't left at an orphanage after those 2 episodes. I now have kids of my own who are determined to give me my comeuppance. In my senior year of high school I talked about dropping out of school. They threatened to kill me, kick me out of the house and dump me in front of a US Marine recruiting station, in that order. When I was a kid I would walk my mom to the stove and tell her I smelled gas. When she would take a whiff all the disgusting goodness of a well-timed fart would go in her nose. Till this day, if anyone say they smell gas she covers her nose and walk the other direction. All the while saying, "Get out of here you pig." I am dying right now. I played the game RuneScape for a while when I was 9 or 10 and I got fairly addicted to it to the point where I stole my parents' credit card and spent close to $1,500 of their money to buy RuneScape Gold from a website. I've paid them back since, with interest, but I feel like crap about it all the time. I tried to kill myself by hanging, but failed. I was lazy so I just threw the rope in the trash. Later my dad found it and checked my room. I played Super Mario 64 at a new friend's house until 3 AM when I was 9. Cops were called, a search party sent out, no regrets. You didn't choose the thug life, the thug life chose you. I was 3 years old when my brother was born. When he was just a few days old my mom put him in his baby swing, turned it on, and left the room to answer the phone. Well, while she was gone the swing stopped and my brother started crying. Being the concerned older sister that I was, I pulled him out of the swing and drug him to my mom saying, "Mommy, the baby is crying." She freaked the heck out and never left him in his swing again. I'd freak out too if my 3-year-old drugged my newborn baby. To this day when my mom hears the sound of a shopping cart behind her she protects her heels. It wasn't intentional. I was just an enthusiastic shopping helper. I used to sleepwalk as a young kid and scream the house down and refuse to be touched by anyone while I was in that state. I was a creepy possessed kid in a horror film, and I terrified my parents. I told my parents that my GF needed an ultrasound. She really just needed a small ovary checkup, but it was more fun just to let my parents worry. I approve of your style. I attempted suicide in my parents' car a few months after high school. I remember there was an incredible amount of blood, like buckets of it sloshing around in my seat. About a year later, my dad and I were having something of a heated discussion when he says to me, "No one in this family but me saw what that car looked like the morning after." He still has the car and uses it now and then. I will never be able to understand how much I've hurt him. Dude. When I was in high school I was very bulimic. If someone was downstairs after I ate dinner I wouldn't be able to go into the bathroom, so my brilliant plan was to go upstairs and puke into grocery bags. I found this to be way easier than using the bathroom. In the comfort of my room I could throw up in peace and not be worried of getting caught. Of course I couldn't throw them away when they were home, so I kept them around my room. I had vomit bags everywhere, under the bed, in my desk drawers, in my closet. It wasn't pretty. One day I went out with a friend and came back at around 3 to get my clothes for work. My stepdad was in his living room and I could hear the wet dry vacuum. I asked why he was cleaning in a joking way and my mum turned around and said, "Cleo, our dog, got into your room today." I instantly was mortified. I went into the living room and my stepdad refused to acknowledge me. There was old puke everywhere, on the stairs, on the floor, in my room, on the couch. Oh god, it was horrible. One of the worst experiences with bulimia I've ever had. When I was little I thought trashing their room and bathroom was a great idea and absolutely nothing was wrong with it. I took toothpaste, shaving cream, shampoo, conditioner, all that jazz, and just squeezed it all over the place. Over the bed, pillows, carpet, sheets, bathtub, sinks, counter, toilet, tile floor, down the hallway. One nice long trail of toothpaste was so cool. Why I thought this was a great idea, I have no clue. I was grounded for a very long time. When I was about 6 I made up a long list of symptoms to fake sick in order to get out of school. Turns out my symptoms very consistent with malaria. My dad had a job with the US Embassy and we were living in Lagos, Nigeria at the time. I had no idea why they were so worried. You have been visited by Post Doggo. Don't worry, you do not need to comment to have good luck. Post Doggo only came to give you good vibes and to wish that your crush or whoever you want texts you. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.